Welcome, everyone. We are live. I'm Sham Hussain, your host for today and marketing director here at Integra Works, a revolutionary AI tech startup based in Dubai. In today's webinar, we'll be exploring key trends and strategies shaping the future of work with a special focus on freelance talent, the gig economy, and how companies can leverage AI-driven solutions to stay ahead. Did you know only 34% of large organizations consistently hit their strategic goals? The other 66%, well, they're probably still looking for that perfect hire who's been stuck in an endless meeting. This is where the gig economy comes in, connecting businesses with talented professionals who can deliver results now. So, what exactly is the gig economy? Well, think of it as a marketplace where work is defined by projects and specific needs rather than traditional full-time roles. This shift is transforming the way we work. Companies can now access specialized talent exactly when they need it, and tech professionals are gaining more freedom to choose their projects and build their expertise globally. Today, we're joined by two leading experts, along with our CEO, Onur Kiraski, who deeply understand this evolving landscape. Firstly, Ani Kaprekar, who brings over 30 years of global tech leadership, has co-founded Tech India Advocates. His journey from corporate leadership to championing tech advocacy gives him unique insights into building successful teams across borders. We also have Marilyn Zakhour, founder and CEO of Cosmic Centaurs, who specializes in transforming organizations to thrive in this new world of work. Her work in organizational development has helped numerous companies create thriving, flexible workplaces. Together, we're going to explore the following: how the gig economy is reshaping the tech industry, what this means for companies and professionals alike, and the strategies you can use to succeed in the new working environment. So let's dive in with our first topic, and we're going to move over to Ani, who's going to talk about the gig economy in general, but in particular around the tech industry. Ani, over to you.
Thank you, Sham. Thank you, Onur, and lovely to see Madeline. Interesting conversation. What I'm going to do, if it's okay, Sham, is before coming into tech industry, diving into tech industry, I'm going to take a bit of macro perspective because the gig economy is something that all of us use so freely, and you did highlight some points. What is gig economy? But more importantly, why? Where did this come about? So I'm just going to take sort of a quick journey 40, 50 years back to answer and debate three pertinent questions that stay on my mind. So let me go back about 50 odd years. What all of us work today, our jobs, nature of our work, was way different than what our parents did, or maybe their parents did. There was a pattern, everyone had a job, it was all linked to your life, and all your dreams of life were linked to your job and work. So there was a big, big chunk, but there was a pattern. So the pattern was established on how we work. How we work. Then in later years, technology entered our life. And I'm talking, 50 odd years back when the computers and the tech started entering offices. That disrupted the how we work part. And the nature of work changed. The pattern was similar, but instead of working on a lot of manual things and lots of papers, we had this beautiful gadgets called computers on our screen and desktops, and it was fascination, but it was. So how we work disrupted and changed. Then a small thing happened in technological world. We don't take much account of it, but some of us, some people listening and you all will remember that after the desktop, when the laptop computing came, we realized that, hey, we don't have to as much go to work can also come to us, right?
Yeah.
It's a small thing, it happened in passing, we didn't take much note of it, but we all changed our habits. So instead of waking up every morning and moving our atoms to go to work, we started moving electrons. I'm quoting Professor Eddie Obeng, who's a big change guru, and I like this line that instead of moving atoms, we started moving electrons. But what essentially was happening that after how we work, where we work was changing. That's the second question, where we work. This now fast forwarded to now 40, 50 years. The recent happening that was pandemic, the COVID got us all to sit in at home. But there was another realization that, hey, it doesn't matter where we work as long as we can give results. So everything shifted from where we work, how we work, to what is the outcome of work. And we realized that we could have a good life and work harmony. I don't like work life balance word, I would say harmony. We all realize that. And our habits of where we work change. A small comma here. So what got disrupted first was how we work. The second disruption was where we work. Now the big question, with advent of technology, collaboration tools, and of course AI, which is everywhere, very soon all of us are going to be asking questions to ourselves: what is work, quote unquote. It sounds very simple, but it's a
Yeah,
big question. It's not a philosophical question, it's a practical question. I bet all of us in last few years, our nature of work, what we call work, had changed. My certainly has. I
completely.
used
Yeah,
to be an executive coach, I used to be consultant, advisor. But a lot of stuff that I used to do now my clients can do through Perplexity, ChatGPT, AI tools, so many things. What do I bring in? What is my work? That is the question all of us are answering. So I just wanted to set this scene. This is the context, the foundation, or a macro view in which we are operating, where gig economy has emerged. How we work, where we work, and what is work. Now I'll fast track to what are the some of the drivers for gig economy. So I'll keep the economic driver aside. Every company wants flexibility, every company wants cost cutting, profitability, and barring few countries, most economies are struggling. So there are a lot of economic drivers which are, of course, pressing companies to find new solutions. But I'm more interested in the social and technical drivers. The social driver which I changed upon was the pandemic, where our habits change. We are not the same people. We realized that I could sit here and I could work for four people and give same amount of work, make same amount of money, hey, probably more. That's what changed. That's the social driver. We started holding true our life harmony more than our work. We realized that work is just part of life. There's more to life. And this actually has actually accelerated the gig economy. The next one, technical driver, is of course the phenomenal rise of collaboration tools. Look what we are doing. I know I'm in Manchester, Sham's in Milton Keynes, Onur is in Dubai, Marilyn is also in Dubai, and all of us are seamlessly talking as if we were sitting next to each other. Now, there's no more fascination, it's become part of our life, right? But the collaborative tools that have emerged, including like yourself, has given us a new driver and option. So, all these things put together, the macro view, economic driver, social driver, and technology drivers. This is what is giving rise to gig economy. I have been going monotonous and long. I'll stop here if you want to ask a question.
no,
I hope that was
that's really
useful, sir.
profound, actually. Ania. It's interesting you say about the laptop because that's when work came home as well, right?
That's it. That's
So
when we came
so
home.
it was a case of and we allowed it really when we were given laptops. Hey, yes, great, I'm getting a shiny laptop, but actually it
Yeah,
meant we were doing more work at home, and the business was benefiting
correct.
from that, and it's not really turned back from that, really, has it? So
Not
now
at all.
work does come home as well, but now we're in a completely different scenario. I think maybe now we in the workplace, maybe as individuals, we have more control now than we've ever had in terms of where we work, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So now, as I said, accelerated with COVID, we've realized actually we can do our jobs sat at
yeah,
sat at home.
yeah,
So I think these are very, very, very key points, and actually it's always good to look at the
yeah.
kind of where we've been and where we are now. So in terms of on your side, obviously you do a lot of work with sort of cross-border
Yes.
teamwork and so forth. So it's even to that distance now. We're talking India a lot of the times, and we're
Yeah,
talking all over the world, right?
yeah.
So that's going to be particularly challenging because language is also within that. So tell us a little bit about the tech side of things that you've seen.
Of course, yes.
Any particular areas that you can highlight to us on
Uh,
tech in particular
yeah, yeah, sure.
cross-border?
I think there are, two out of all the industries, the two industries which were always sort of faster to adapt and used to the freelancer and remote working concept was, one was of course tech industry, and second is creative industries. It's not just tech industry, it's both. Creative industry sometimes more than tech industry, and I say that because I partially wear a hat in creative industries as well, being part ex sort of filmmaker,
You're a
actor,
poet and I believe a musician
storyteller, and
as well.
so on and so
So,
forth.
yes,
We'll
I
keep
think
that
that,
aside. But
yeah,
creative industries, everything is project based. I mean, you make a film, you disappear. You create some play, and then you disappear. So everything is all freelancer and individual based. And tech industry has also gone through metamorphosis, right? From the multiple jumps in outsourcing. All of us knew outsourcing. We shipped work to some distant land, and
mm,
in the morning, suddenly the packets of work arrived. Tom Friedman had written a fantastic book called The World is Flat. Probably you've heard of it. Okay. And where he talks about that opportunities are equal for all geographies and nations. He, of course, was referring to India. The world is flat where opportunities are there for everyone. Now, unfortunately, not unfortunately, fascinatingly, what has happened, the world has disappeared. And this sounds like a shocking statement. Essentially, geography has become history. There's no
yeah,
more geographical challenge anymore. And tech industry has been able to take phenomenal advantage of this, because technology is sort of a common factor across borders. India certainly is thriving because India was way ahead when it came to outsourcing. India, anyway, always produces about 1 million engineers every year, qualified English speaking. So they were quickly to take advantage of that. But it's not just India, even UK too. There are, I believe, around more than 4 million freelancers currently contributing to close to about 162 billion to the economy. Okay.
sure.
So, why tech industry thrives when it comes to freelancing and remote working, and because tech industry can easily do plug and play, and that plug and play and outcome based working is the behavior which tech industry was able to adopt fast. Cut to 40 years back, everything was meant to be, your jobs were secured, you had a pattern to follow, 9 to 5, or still many do, but everything was on presence and what you do. Now everything goes on what you create, your outcome. And that's where tech industry makes a difference, that everything is now shifting more outcome based. I'm still sounding a bit philosophical, but I'm keeping it that domain. I don't want to dive too deep.
No, it's actually in line
Yeah,
with and I'll just bring Onur in very quickly here,
yeah, yeah.
because this is sort of where we're headed. We've with Onur's experience. In fact, I'll hand over to Onur on this front
Yeah.
because of these are the challenges he's seen, in tech. So Onur, if you want to maybe give us a little bit of insight into your pain with this in your work in your life.
Well, I think then many of you heard of our story. The reason that actually we started this company is based on my personal painful experience about having the right talent at the right time that is going to be involved in a project to either unblock a project or accelerate a project or deal with a change, and changes happen in projects. And I'm seeing one of the comments, nothing has dealt with time zones, which is true. Time zones are still an issue, and particularly if we are going, between 4-hour time zones and windows. And I think the new technology helping us in just the way that's to schedule the time zones. For example, in our platform, we have the time zone availability based on the individuals, so that you can basically have video collaboration and ensure that you select somebody within the time zone. And remember the experience, Sham, that we had during JITEX. We onboarded a service provider from Brazil to serve our potential clients in the US, just exactly because of that time zone challenge.
Yeah.
So, anyhow, I
You can
will
work
pause
24 hours.
here and then give it back to you.
Yeah. I think so. Just that's great, and I appreciate that. I think I want to bring Marilyn in here because of her experience working in organizations who are trying to decide whether they should use freelancers, should they get involved with the gig economy or not. And it'd be good because I think you've worked with, from what I'm seeing, startups and large organizations. So you're seeing this across the two kind of big, big field. So give us some insight on this, Marilyn.
Yeah, absolutely. Without going too much into the past, I do love Annie's perspective, and I do think it's important to understand where things come from in order to think where they're going. And actually, the gig economy is new in the sense, as Annie presented, of what type of work we can bring home. But actually, if you think back, the gig economy isn't new. I actually like to joke that my grandmother was a freelancer. She was a seamstress living in Canada, and she didn't do computer work, but she would make sweaters for Gap, I remember, in her basement. And then someone would come and pick them up. And I think if you think of, artisans, if you kind of look back, agriculture, actually, for a very long time, we all did our work at home. And in fact, the word office comes from holding office, which didn't necessarily mean a place. It just meant a job. And so I think these things are, they always fluctuate. It's always there's these polarities that we explore. And that's why there's a great Nobel Prize that was written in the 1940s. And I'm going to butcher the name of the guy who the economist, his name is Coase, I think. And he put out a theory about why do companies exist. And I'm going to start here in order to answer why and when should you hire a freelancer and when shouldn't you? And his theory was, why would companies exist? Theoretically, economists love to think that the market has all the answers and that you can go to market to buy anything. And his theory was that actually the reason you can't just go to the market for work all the time, the reason you can't only hire freelancers all the time is because you don't always know what you're going to ask them to do. And the reason you employ people is that you're not buying a work package, you're not buying a deliverable, actually you're buying their availability because you don't already know what you need from them. And so I think that's a great kind of place to also think about that the best situation in which to hire freelancers. And I think a lot of your work as an intermediary between companies and freelancers helps to solve for this, is that you have to be able to put it in a contract. You have to be able to say, this is exactly what I'm hiring you for. This is the work package that I expect you to deliver. Because if as a company, you're not able to specify these things, then your relationship with the freelancer will end up in disaster because the expectations of what that person can provide is, will not be met. And I think there's also, and that's why it works so well in creative work, as Annie's examples, they were quite perfect in software, by the way. You guys are called Integra. And the nice thing about software is that there are integration layers, which means that different developers can be working on small little bits and pieces. And then there will be something which is a technology layer that can just collate all of these different lines of code and run the code. That can be harder in other kinds of jobs where you need human collaboration, where you need people to work together, not just to submit their piece of the puzzle. So if you need to think of that model as well, in that, can this person work independently versus how much do they need to be within the team? How much is human collaboration at the center of value creation versus how much is it about integrating different bits and pieces of work into each other? And of course, and again, Annie mentioned those, there are very well-established benefits to hiring freelancers. Again, if you can define their work and the contract doesn't end up doubling its timeline, we know the arguments for cost efficiency. We know the arguments for scalability, bringing people in. When you have perhaps an existing team, you just need them, you need to inflate them for a little bit. There's a kickoff, there's a big project. You just need a bit of muscle. You don't need it forever, but you need it to get things off the ground, right? So the cost efficiency is definitely there. I think in tech, a lot of really great experts and in creative areas as well choose to not give up their freedom in return for employment. And so sometimes to get the best talent out there, you do have to work with people who don't want to be employed full-time, who want that freedom, who want the choice of where to be and where to work from. And it definitely, operationally gives you a lot of flexibility in scaling up or down, testing things out, and creates a different kind of risk with regards to your fixed costs and how you choose to build up your organization. So that's a little bit of my perspective on where is the right context to think of freelancers as part of your
Thank you, Marilyn. You've given quite a sort of a very fair view of the situation, because we could get carried away and say, look, everybody needs to go remote. There is no such thing as an organization with people that are there employed 9 to 5. So what I'm sort of hearing here is that actually it's you do still need that core for a lot of organizations. Let's say you still need that core. However, like you said, bringing on that muscle, I think that needs to be part of your strategy. Basically, if you're running an organization, you should be able to quickly be able to get talent that you need to be able to do the job. Now, obviously, that's where there's a lot of pain, a lot of businesses experience around that, and probably a lot of probably leaving a bad taste in some people's mouths as well, because you like you said, it could be scope creep, it could be people maybe not actually being able to do what they say they were going to do at the beginning, right? So have you sort of come across these examples, both yourself and Marilyn, in terms of from a freelance point of view, and what's kind of your thoughts around that? How do we kind of mitigate that really for the for the future, let's say, if we are going to fully integrate more freelancers into our workplace? Either one of you.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, Annie, do you want to start?
No, you can stick. No problem.
Okay, well, I mean, I really think, I mean, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but I always say that a freelancer can only be as good as the company that hires them, in the sense that you need to have a strong person who can interface with that freelancer or team. You need to be able to be very explicit about what you're asking them to do. You need to also understand the real, like in a real way, what their timeline can look like. We find a lot of like, oh, but you can do this in a day. No, I really can't. And so I think that you have to have on this side someone who has a good sense that can evaluate the effort needed, the time needed, the feasibility of exporting this externally, what the value of that is also able, I think, to put in, beyond shaping the original request, is to put in a good operating system. Because there's this tendency like, oh, I'll just give it to the freelancer and they'll send it back to me a month later and it'll be done. But I actually think, putting in cadence, putting in checks, being good project managers, honestly, is what it comes down to. And knowing how and how far to integrate the freelancer into the team and into the process and into the kind of project timeline. That requires a lot of good expertise and a lot of intentionality in how you approach this. And that's when you can really reap the benefits.
Yeah.
Sure. So I'm gonna just
can I just add something here? I mean, I'm tempted to add here on Madeline's point.
Go, Annie.
Because I don't want organizations to think that this classic organization model is going to disappear and it's all going to be freelancers world. It's not going to be like that. It's always going to be hybrid. I mean, we come from all of us used to hear 30 years back the word like offshore and then onshore and near shore and everything, and now suddenly the shores have disappeared. So so it's going to be a hybrid model more and more going forward. Okay, but it's going to be inevitable. There'll be challenges, but here is the beautiful thing that's happening now. That earlier in the old work pattern, let's say you had a the traditional job, you 9 to 5, you had fixed pattern. You had a job security, and the organizations had to also find a way if there is any inefficiency, but the people stayed. Now that entire responsibility was one side on the organizations to ensure that the right work is produced. Now with this gig economy emerging, the responsibility is getting balanced, because don't forget, no one's going to hire a freelancer if he and she does not produce the work that's promised, because it's all outcome based. It is all measurable. It can be tracked. Certain KPIs can be defined. So the responsibility is actually getting balanced. Because see, what is this that CEOs or entrepreneurs look? They constantly look for three things. They need funding to grow, they need customers to sell, and they need talent. And what the third factor, talent, makes all the difference. And what gig economy offers, especially in the tech world, is continuity with flexibility. It's actually, with gig economy, you can hire agility and expertise on demand, which is great. Why wouldn't you not have it? Funny enough, just before this webinar yesterday, I thought, let me do a test case. I was talking to a freelancer, a friend of mine called Ravindra Gadgir, who's UK based, and he's been like freelancer for the last 20 years. And we were debating all of this, and he's straight to the point. He said, see, listen, this is inevitable now. The traditional jobs may not continue. Organizations have to run, adapt to the gig economy, and the freelancers have to develop more responsible mindset if they want to keep
hybrid, isn't it?
It's hybrid. But the key point I'm driving is the accountability and responsibility is now getting balanced at both ends, not just organization, but also people who are producing freelance work.
Interesting.
And the bridge is technology in between.
So I'm going to bring Onur here, because as a CEO, I know he's involved with funding, talent, and there was one other one that you mentioned in between, and everything else in between. He's dealing with that at the moment. But Onur, what's your thoughts around this? this sort of hybrid working? How do you see this moving forwards?
I think quite a few points. I think to add, I think one of them is immediately relevant to, I think, what Annie was talking about the remote work changing, and then how do we tap on the method of accountability or outcome requirement when we are enabling remote work of freelancers, fractional workforce, what have you. Actually, this is what we had in mind from the start, just because I'm coming from the professional services industry and I have deployed critical communication solutions, etc. And that's I always had in mind. So how do I make that happen? So that's why we have embedded the statement of works in the middle of the transaction and converting deliverables into milestones from the talent side, and also making the onboarding automation of the talent side in a matter of 3 steps. Today, I was with one of the government customers in Dubai, and with him, we wrote a job description in 10 seconds, and it was speech to text. Basically, just said a few words. We captured it as a sentence. We converted it into a job description by the click of 3 buttons. That's what our platform does today, is a CV, and then there are many, of course, other technologies. But what I'm trying to say is that so we are removing the friction points one by one as much as possible. And the biggest friction points, I think, is related to this point, the fact that when I engage a freelancer, there is no outcome commitment, and therefore, basically, I am going to end up with potentially lower quality work. I had my own experiences, ordering slideware from Fiverr and then ending up in debates and endless disputes and not getting what I want. So we know that that type of creative work is very difficult maybe to make outcome focused. But the work that we do that's related with technology work and outcome of any stuff is easier to capture. So we converted that basically either time and materials or an outcome and milestone basis in the engagement. So I'll pause here and then maybe ask a question to Marilyn, because obviously we are following US market very closely. And as you know, they are the highest penetration of remote work. So it takes about 68 days to hire a high-tech worker in the US. It's probably much higher here. You can take that in mind, one perspective. Second perspective, 40% of US workers are already remote. So they're already in the gig economy, 40%, it's a big number. 81% of US workforce is saying that they would rather take a gig job if they are paid better. I mean, look at the statistics. Like, because now we are talking about our generation, or Marilyn is much younger than all of us, but what I'm trying to say is basically Gen Z, Gen Y, they don't think like us even. So the thinking has completely shifted to a mode that, okay, if I'm paid more, and if it gives me the freedom and liberty to be with my friends, with my family, do what I like, I'll do it tomorrow. Because there's no job security anyway in their mind. In our minds, there is this concept of a certain job security, but in their mind, I think there is even no job security. They already shifted to that world, I think, as a mindset. That's what I feel. And that's what Reid Hoffman also said, right? 9 to 5 jobs is going to disappear in X number of years, and founder of LinkedIn. He sees what's happening. I think there is one element of the technology enablement work culture, and then but there's the other element of the culture of the new generation coming into the workforce. So I wanted to pick maybe Marilyn's brains around that, because he's also a very an expert in organization development, and get her perspectives if that's relevant.
Thank you. I mean, I try not to predict the future so that no one can come back and tell me how wrong I was. But I have maybe 2 things that I'd like to bring into this projection. Actually, there's a second Nobel Prize. I feel like a really good student. Joe Santos, if you're listening to me, these are all from your class. But there's a second Nobel Prize around why companies exist that is human-centric, that says that it's called the knowledge-based view of the firm. And it says that actually the reason why people give away their freedom to work for companies, because you're just saying Gen Z want their freedom, they want to be wherever they want, they don't believe in this job security thing. So what would make them trade their freedom for employment? And so this theory says that we trade our freedom for employment because we believe that companies have something to teach us that we can't simply learn on our own. And it's true. Sometimes you'll look at certain companies and you're looking at someone's CV and you're like, oh, they went to a great school. You hear us say that, like, I don't know, some of the big, food companies. You see someone went to P&G or Unilever, like, oh, they went to a good school. You see someone went to McKinsey, you say that, right? There are certain companies we say that about. And so, of course, we're all rebellious. I'm pretty sure that when I was 20, I would have said the same thing. I don't always love generational views because I think we forget what we were like 20 years ago or 30 when we kind of start to create. I'm not saying generations aren't a real concept. I'm just saying sometimes if we wait a little bit, things might change. I also don't believe in, you can find a statistic to support any perspective. So you'll always find one or the other. So I think it's always, we know the right answer is always it depends. But, and Ani brought this up beautifully, the what is work is also changing. And if you look, I love to look at science fiction as maybe a potential of what the future could look like. And we have a lot of these examples. Aldous Huxley came to mind earlier, Ani, when you were talking, where and today with AI, we are asking ourselves these questions, like, what are the jobs of tomorrow? What do they look like? Maybe there's a future where machines do most of the hard work and we spend our life in leisure. I don't know.
That'd be nice. Like Wall-E.
I would be quite sad about it because I think of work as a beautiful value and it adds a lot of meaning to my life. But there can be that scenario. But I do think that we shouldn't be sensationalists about these numbers. I think people change much, much slower than we predict. Look at how fast the flexibility of the pandemic to the return to office mandates that everybody's bringing up. So we don't change that fast, I think. Nice. Maybe a few more decades before we have to worry about this.
No, agree.
We'll be right.
Evolutionary forces are there, so evolutionary forces are not going to allow us to adopt that rapidly. Indeed. There you go. So
great.
Yeah, over to you, please, Sham or Ani.
So I want to touch on the cultural element here now, and we talked about this could be language as well included here. So again, Marilyn, I know you kind of work very closely with organizations. What sort of guidance can you give to businesses who are looking to bring in freelance talent when it comes to sort of the cross-border, communication, culture, fit, etc., etc.? And this also applies to Ani as well because he specializes in the Indian market. So maybe if you let us know, give us your thoughts on that, Marilyn, to begin with. From a cultural point of view, what's your kind of advice?
So I think culture means a lot of things. It can mean the culture of the person you're hiring. It can be your culture, the culture of your company. And as with any outsourcing choice, I think the better your brief, the better the result. And I do believe that you should take your time to onboard your freelancers almost in the same way that you would onboard your employees. I think they do a better job if they understand your company culture, your people, how you behave, what you bring to the world. If you take time to explain to them who you are, what you stand for, they will do a better job because they're humans. Just because they're able to produce a finished piece of product doesn't mean that they don't need the same context. So I think context matters. And we often just ship work to freelancers as if they could magically, recover all of this ground without us taking the time. And
as if they're like working, plug and play almost. I can just pick it off the shelf and off it goes. There's got to be more.
And we forget that, by the way, they have competing attention from other companies, and that even if it's temporary, if they care a little bit more about your own, they're going to spend more time and energy on your project than whoever else has hired them for this other gig. So that would be like, if I had to only pick one thing, that would be the one thing I'd pick.
Excellent. Ani, what's your thoughts?
I think I fully agree with what Marilyn said. And that was the exact point that was going through my mind. And I see that happening because, I work a lot with companies operating in India, UK corridor. My work in Tech India Advocates is all about championing India tech into the Western world. And I can also see new models are coming up. Like I came in from 20 years back in the outsourcing world. That's how I arrived in the UK. And now I keep hearing the word insourcing, which is a new word.
Yes,
I think if you remember, I introduced you to, I always keep finding, like I came across Integra Works. I keep finding companies who are doing something differently. So I came across a company called Insource India. And I said, what the hell is that? What is this new word? I wanted to educate myself. So essentially, it's like They what they do is they create a force of freelancers, and they do everything managing them in India. They don't get into deliverables, they don't get into culture creation. These are like your employees, but they're based out of India. Now why it matters, and that spark stayed with me, that in the past I have come from outsourcing industry. All of us knew output extremely well, but somewhere the outcome suffered. And you know why? Because we focused on what needs to happen or how it needs to happen. Okay, let me set up the point. Many a times, what Madeline was referring earlier about brief of work, customers, and especially in the Western world, are very good at saying what needs to happen or how. One is the function, second is the process, right? The culture comes into action when you explain to people why it needs to happen that way. That's where the enrollment goes at the higher level. And I thought this insourcing guys, what they're doing, this is very interesting. They sort of are taking themselves out. They say we will just only manage the bare process, but this is your workforce, and which was very interesting, because then companies started taking more ownership of the people, because finally we can't ignore the people angle here. It is your work. It's going to, the work which freelancer produces is not the last mile, because the freelancer has to realize my customer's customer is actually my customer. Unless they
Exactly.
learn that last mile, it's going to have a lot of challenges. Technology here, of course, can play a lot of role. There are a lot of tools that are coming in for collaboration, but the human angle will still be there. I'll just stop here. I hope I've not gone in some wrong direction.
No, it's great. I think maybe I just wanted to add the perspective of course, also the time angle here. So when the duration is longer in the project and the requirement and touch points are more, then the culture element also takes a bit more emphasis, because you have more touch points and then deliverables take long and the projects are longer. That's why then we have this staff augmentation type of use case, which we also support for remote work or on-site. And that's similar to what we did outsourcing. And remote work is growing 23% per year.
Yeah.
Right. That's quite. Although we say that we went back to normal after COVID, for remote work we don't want to, as Marlin said, we went back in certain ways, but we didn't go back to spend 1.5 hours on the road. We don't want to do that anymore. So we went back to certain things which we enjoy, because we are all humans. We want human connections. We go to two times to the office. We go and meet. We want to have this time, touch people and shake hands and make sure that we see our friends. But at the end of the day, we don't want the pain that comes with the office work and commuting and everything. So, yeah, I just wanted to put that perspective of the duration of an engagement in the angle. This is the micro work package. That's why I always bring this micro work package, which is basically a package that an expert can deliver without too much touch points, is the one that is easier remotizable, if I can say so. But the other ones requires a bit more consultative approach, because it has more touch points, and it requires also somebody to be inserted to the team. The other thing that we did in the platform, and they are still need to see the fruits of it, is that we enable teams basically to come in together. For example, I think, Marilyn, you don't even know that maybe, but we will pitch it to you. For example, you have a team, let's say remotely located in multiple places, and then you come, and then they can come to the platform, and they can basically act as a team and deliver a project together. And then all of them are contributing to a certain milestone, and then they finish the work, and then they move on. There's one element I think that is going to be in the future also quite useful, I think, because then it allows this seamless collaboration of remote work teams. Yes, they need to potentially know each other, etc. But at the end of the day, complementary skills of a project manager, let's say a designer plus a solution architect, can be done in a single platform for outcome-based delivery.
Sham, I'm tempted to add a point here, because I'm sorry, I like these kind of industry shaping discussions, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
See, a lot of what we discussed, and Madeline made amazing points on culture creations and why it's important. There seems to be a lot of focus on the organization, entrepreneurs, and CEOs. Okay, let's say the recipient. Now, more focus is going to shift on the providers. There is going to be a distinct behavior change from the freelancers itself. I mean, I had a classic corporate kind of world job for 20, 30 years, 10 years for plus. I'm freelancers. Each one of us will have to be far more enterprising than we are now. It is inevitable. Okay, I'm not still saying entrepreneurial. I'm just saying far more enterprising.
Yeah.
Because it's the quality of life and the freedom and the choices. It's all of that you want. Then it comes at a distinct price and investment into yourself. I just don't want
100%.
to pass all the responsibility onto the organizations. I want to equally sort of awaken the freelancers as well, that they will have to make it's not just, the freedom
Yeah.
comes with responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't just. Yeah, you're spot on there. Actually,
That is important.
And it's a very, very good point, because the
Yeah.
thing is that you have to become more. Yes, you're good at what you do, but you have to be better at presenting it and being able to put it across, right? And I think this is where the collaboration tools, for example, that we're working on with Integra Works, they're tools that allow you to become entrepreneurial overnight. So let's say if you're really good at what you do, for example, you're really good at I don't know, cloud transformation, or any particular, let's say, penetration testing, or whatever that is that is your thing. It's not enough for you to just be good at what you do there, because the thing is, if you can't market that service, if you can't put it out there for people to buy that service, then actually that you're not being fully utilized, right?
Correct.
So with what Integra Works does is, what we're saying is, you can come along and showcase your skills, whatever that is. I mean, at the moment we're pretty much tech oriented. Come and showcase your skills. So that's going to require the freelancer to start to think differently about what they do, rather than it just being, it's just a dots and zeros. Actually, I need to present this in a certain way. So I think you're right. I think the platforms, collaboration tools will allow us in the future to be able to present those services. And therefore, like Onur's saying, with what Integra Works, with what we're doing, we're creating digitized packages of services that ordinarily would never have been packaged like that. Why can we do that now? Because like Marilyn said, the outcome element of it is become important. It's not good enough for the business, for the SME, the entrepreneur, to just say, oh, I'll just get a freelancer. It's too risky to do that. What if things go wrong? And nowadays in the age of data as well, in particular, if things go wrong, they go wrong pretty badly. So now those safeguards are in place, but that will come with platforms like ours at Integra Works, where we're saying, actually, a lot of that, the legal compliance, you just need to come in and present what you do, and we will market that to your audience.
Yeah, I think this is maybe one point that I want to explain also to Ani and Marilyn as well, and of course to the audience, is that this is like a blueprint of the experience of the individual, is then can be observed in a matter of service offer, which basically is a statement of his or her experience of another work that's done. So it creates the first trust element between the individual's previous project. It's a fully described project with even a price inside for something that the individual has done. And that's basically what we call a service offer. So it's their first engagement step with the individual. And then the second engagement step, a talent profile. Third is, of course, interviews, etc. But that actually allows you to establish that immediate trust, because you see that, okay, somebody has done this work before. It costs this much, I understand. But apart from that, there are deliverables. We know that it will be the same. There will be certain things %, but not the entire package will change. So we allow also customize that service package and make an immediate order. So you start work tomorrow, but you start work tomorrow not without understanding the outcome. You already saw that the person has done it. You already modified those deliverables based on your needs, and then you start work for outcome-based packages in the platform.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Do we have some time? Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I mean, you know me, Sham. I'm more of a tech philosopher than just purely technologist. But there's another point, and I have this opportunity to drive out this point, because I hope that as many as organizational CEOs are listening to this webinar, a lot of freelancers should also listen. That yes, there is rise of economy. I read a report in preparation for this that maybe by 2030, 80% of workforce could be freelancing or part-timing or having more than one job. So hey, it's all the way from Manchester to Mumbai, it's going to be great. Fine. Now, I want to connect back to the point I started with, the three pertinent question is how we work, where we work and what is work. See, our grandfather's generation and all before that, their entire goal was to survive. That means as in the survival was the key thing, especially from where the kind of developing country I come from. They wanted to provide for the next generation. My parents' generation, they were trying to improve the standard of living. Our generation, the next generation, is focused on quality of living, and the next one will be completely individualistic. All sounds great.
Right.
This is a privilege we cannot forget. This is a privilege that our past generations did not have. So the freelancers have to also develop a character, not just enterprising nature, to understand this is a privilege. You can't abuse the system. You have to take advantage of privilege.
Here, right?
So very important. Sorry?
Yeah, we've worked hard to get here. We've been through a lot of challenges.
It's not just us.
Right? Yeah.
Our parents and grandparents work hard to bring us where we are. So we owe it to them as much as we owe to future generation. True. And I wanted to make 3 points for like tips for companies, if it's okay, because Marilyn spoke about what's the key one, and that sort of started my company. And I'm sure you are taking care of it on your platform, because we are all going outcome based. The scope of work and all the definition documents, people take a lot of pride into all the classic things. And I use 3 simple words to define that everyone needs to understand. Any work has a body, a character, and a personality. The body is bare bone and flesh. You asked what you did. I asked for a piece of code. Here is my code. I asked for a flyer. This is my design flyer. That's body. The character is it done the right way for the right purpose? There's a bit of ethics that come into action. So body, then the character. And the third is the personality of work. What's the brand? What's the style? Because that's where your culture is reflected. So until you get the body, character, and personality right, gig economy and the people are part of it will have these challenges. I'm sure we'll learn.
That's excellent.
Thanks. I'll stop now.
Really interesting way of looking
I'm
at
a poet. I can't help it, man.
I really love that. And I'm going to repeat something that someone on my team says, and I experienced it with a couple of freelancers that we worked with. I love the ethics aspect of this, Ani. I think if you don't try to put out the best work that you can out there, then you shouldn't be doing it at all. But there's also, Tala on my team always says, being easy to work with is a competitive advantage. And that's your personality piece. And as a freelancer, in the same way that companies, as you said, there's a burden on companies to be prepared, to onboard, to explain, to package, to, and so on and so forth. I think you yourself as a freelancer need to develop your methodology. And I think you've been driving that point as well. What is your approach? Why should I come to you versus the 30 other people who are there? What's your brand? How do you show up? How do you help to structure the work as well? There's a bigger burden in some ways. As you said, there's a rebalancing and there's a burden on freelancers to come with their own methodology and their own expertise, because that company might be doing it with 1, 2, or 3 freelancers, but they do work for dozens of clients, hopefully. So they're also able to build a good process as to how to get this right, that they can teach organizations on adopting.
Excellent, guys. This is brilliant, by the way. I was sort of saving a question to the end, which was, can you give us some tips for freelancers? And what you've just said there is like, it's so profound, actually, and I think it's worth capturing as a piece of work in its own right. To be fair.
Also, another one to say that read another countryman's product from Marilyn's, which is going to talk actually. Talking a lot about what Ani mentioned, right? About our responsibility of living in this world is basically Jordan Peterson, right? So he's going to talk a lot about the fact that how we should be responsible and how we should take responsibility of what we do, and then all the benefits that we are now reaping because of the sacrifice of our past generations. So another piece of advice.
Excellent. That's really good. Right, so we're gonna move. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate your time and input so far. We're gonna move to questions.
We don't have any questions, I think.
I've got a couple of questions around dealing with time zones. So is there any sort of tips? I know it has been mentioned previously, but is there anything specifically that you would say for people to be aware of in terms of how to deal with it, because it is quite challenging. You like for myself, I've got UK, Dubai, and India, and I've sort of figured out a little pattern. But are there any tips on that front?
Can I say two things on that? The first is obviously and always to have compassion and empathy for people's time zones. But the second thing, and maybe the more practical one, is treat it like a feature, not a bug. And so what I mean by that is think about it in terms of like, instead of saying, oh, it's such a problem, Sham is never available at the right time, it's midday by the time we can talk to him or whatever it is. What advantage can you reap from the time difference? Because actually time zone differences allow you to have a longer coverage and allow people to start something when others can finish it, and so on and so forth. So I think if you think of it as an advantage as opposed to simply an inconvenience, maybe there's something more interesting that can come out of it.
That's a great point. I mean, we had that. Anu touched on it earlier on. We met with a service provider in Brazil, and they start work when we, in the UK in particular, 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. That's when they start work. So it's like a 24/7. If you get it right, you've got people working for you 24/7 almost. Apart from weekends, hopefully. Well, it depends. However, if you're a freelancer, you might not be. But go on. Is there another question there?
Yeah, we have another question about can commercial leaders excel in the gig economy?
Can commercial leaders excel in the gig economy?
Very, very good question, actually.
I think, of course, and there is no option currently. Inevitable.
As with always, there's a spectrum. So I think that you can definitely help to expand a sales force when the product is simple enough to sell. By the way, we're not reinventing this. This is called channels, right? And when somebody decides to sell through a different channel, they do it so the channel has to adapt to the complexity of the product. So think of something like what we do. It's, we're an organizational and leadership development consultancy. Our product is very complicated. Not only that, it really depends on the context of our client. We don't just have pre-packaged solutions that we can sell. Sure, we have some, broad products, but we really have to adapt. So I would find it impossible to get a commercial leader to represent us because they need to be from us. But for certain other types of products that are more simple, easy to sell, where the pitch is clear, the target audience is very well defined, they're easy to find. There's plenty and very good organizations actually that do lead generation and sales that are gig economy based. So I see no reason not to. It really just depends on the complexity of the product you're trying to sell.
Yeah, and I think if I look at that, it's maybe commercial or sales leadership are converging from a more generalist view also to a specialist view. This is what I notice myself because the domains are getting very specific. Creating a personal brand is becoming important also in social media. Marilyn will know very much about that. And then that personal brand has to be specific. Previously, for example, for my case, I could say the program manager, services leadership. No, I have to say exactly what I do. And then I think the same thing is that the expertise. So as now everybody has a voice, I think we have to have all these voices to stand out. One of them has to have a single and not single, maybe double, triple, but very clear and concise mandate, which we feel ourselves and which we are engaging the world through.
Yeah,
excellent. Another question. Yeah, sorry, go on, Annie.
No, I was just thinking about what would CEOs need to do at this stage, and how it's advantage to growing companies, actually, this entire gig economy, and particularly to startups in the tech world. I think this gig economy is fantastic gift to them, because startups, when they're growing, and any ambitious CEO who wants to grow the company has to have access to talent with flexibility and good cost considerations, and that may not be the full-time model. So for example, I work as a mentor and coach with a lot of tech company CEOs and startups. If I were to do this full-time, I would be costly. I know that. I would love to but that's not something they can afford. But if they break it into pieces, they can hire a few days here, a few days there, based on outcome. I think it's a fantastic gift to startups, because they suddenly have the same level of access to talent which big companies used to have, and
Absolutely.
that's a big shift. because that.
And then we studied this in detail. You're very much right. So we studied that, and then we saw the three trends: fractional workforce. Senior people like yourselves can be available to companies. That's what's usually called fractional, and that's usually this senior people who are coming in as a consultant or as an add-on. And you have the staff augmentation layer, which we discussed a little bit longer term. And then you have the lower layer, which are shorter term projects, which is more about the gig economy and short-term projects. And that's basically where the freelancers are coming in. So I would say these three layers understanding was important for me when I was trying to position the product and the market. And that's how I see that. But all of them are growing at the same time. So both senior people like me are able to access to coaches and even to advisors on an advisory basis. I cannot afford an advisor that's going to cost me $20,000 a month, but if I need
we'll charge you less, don't worry.
Become a product
then
$1,000 per.
we need a special deal. But I know Annie, you do a lot of work with CEOs, and I bet this what we're discussing now is on their minds, thinking, right,
it is on their mind.
When do we shift? Is it a shift? Is it kind of, how do we augment? How do we create this hybrid situation? So it's really good to get
what Marilyn said. Sorry interrupt. It was very beautiful the way Marilyn put it. That treat it as a feature, not as a bug. And the more sooner you take advantage of this feature, you will probably way ahead. And CEOs and the startup founders have to learn to shape their organizations around the gig economy. And you can still create good hybrid teams if you focus on the culture, ethics, that part. And it may still feel like a homogeneous unit, but it's just as freelancers have to learn the privilege, the CEOs and founders also have to adapt fast.
And CEO and the business owners, based on my experience personally, keep the core of your unit, and define what is core and essential for you, what's in your DNA, and of course keep that internal. But then we do a lot of other things. You do a market web page, you do a marketing campaign, you do X, Y, Z, you do say a new add-on, an API integration, you do whatever around the peripherals of your solution. Either you are developing a product or a service. So, and then you should be able to, as I said, to find mechanisms to enable external parties to come in and help with that, expert internal parties, which will accelerate your, of course, progress, and ultimately help you serve your customers better as well.
Yeah. If I can, I love your question. It's like, what would be your advice to CEOs? Because we did talk about our advice to freelancers, and I love fundamentals. So I love going back to like basic thinking. And basic thinking is this: you have a strategy. From that strategy, you have strategic initiatives and projects that you need to run. Towards those, you have a list of capabilities that are required in order to deliver on them. You can rate yourself. How do you rank on this capability today? How do you need to rank in order to deliver on the strategic initiative? And which ones of those, and I think, Onur, that's what you're saying, is core, and therefore you have to own this capability. Think of it in a way that if a VC came, or a private equity company or whatever it is, came to buy your company, would they say, oh, but these people are not your employees? Mm-hmm. So whatever core capability is essential to your business model, that should be internal. You should own it. And the core capabilities that are external to your business model, you can outsource. And so your make versus buy decisions there. And the second thing is, sometimes, yes, they should be core to your business model, but you're having a hard time recruiting that person full time, or maybe you can't afford them. So temporary access to that capability until you ramp up or build up, or get your next funding or whatever it is, might also be the answer. So I just think follow a good decision-making process to decide whether this is internal or external, to find the right talent, and to be very clear on why you did this. The outcome's never in your hands. Was it a good freelancer or not? You do your best, you try to pick the right guys. They may or may not succeed. But if you can go back and say, if I went back in time, I would make the same decision again, even if the outcome was good or bad, then as a CEO, you've done your job of being like a sound decision maker.
Fantastic.
Very
advice,
good point. Guys. I hired, for example, I made this decision. I hired my first freelancer from, I'm not going to tell the name of the company, but from basically one of the freelancers unit, which is the top, one of the top players. And actually, I hired the product manager, and he was also very competent and very good. So he also helped me in a way. But what he created had to have continuity for handover to others. And if I didn't have that continuity, the value of the work became much less than it should be, right? So see, a mistake that I did myself, which I have to learn from, and everybody can learn from. Great.
He's made some very good decisions, and obviously me as a marketing director, thank you, Onur, and some not so good, right? So I guess learning, it's kind of taking that experience and applying that. So listen, guys, this has been a great discussion. Thank you very much for your time today. I know we're overrunning a little bit here, but really, useful insight, and I think we've had a bit of a session here. This has been so useful just for myself and Onur, because we are in this position at the moment. We're a startup, we're growing, and all of this advice has been so useful for us. I can only imagine what it's going to be doing for other people. So appreciate you jumping on. Thanks everybody for joining the call, and we'll catch you on the next one. We do have a couple more. We're trying to do one a month at the moment, so we'll shortly reveal details about the next one. But listen, thanks again, Ani, Marilyn, Onur, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, and
Thank you,
Marlon, for joining.